A man is walking across Waterloo Bridge in London. Suddenly, he feels a sharp sting in his leg. After a few days, he's dead. What killed him? A microscopic poison pellet fired from an umbrella. This was not an accident. It was an assassination. And the story behind it is stranger than fiction. September 7th, 1978 was the birthday of Todor Zhivkov, the de facto leader of the communist Bulgaria. That morning, Georgi Markov was making his usual journey to work. He crossed the Waterloo Bridge in London and headed toward the BBC's offices at Bush House. While waiting at a bus stop near Waterloo Bridge, he felt a sudden sharp sting in the back of his right thigh. It was quick. Almost like an insect bite, he turned to see a man behind him picking up an umbrella from the ground. The man muttered something in a foreign accent, apologized, and quickly hailed a taxi. Markov didn't think much of it in the moment. He mentioned the odd sting to a colleague later on that day, but brushed it aside. That night, he developed a fever. By the next morning, he developed severe pain, high-grade fever, and vomiting. He was admitted to St. James's Hospital. Initially, the doctors suspected an infection, but on his thigh, they noticed a small red puncture wound. He told them about the strange incident at the bus stop. It sounded strange and suspicious, but without clear evidence, the doctors couldn't be sure what was happening inside his body. Over the next 3 days, his condition deteriorated rapidly. His organs began to fail, and by September 11th, just 4 days after the sting, Georgi Markov was dead. He was only 49 years old. The British authorities immediately suspected foul play. An autopsy also revealed something extraordinary lodged in his thigh, a tiny metal pellet, just over a millimeter wide, made of platinum and iridium. Inside the pellet was ricin, a highly toxic compound extracted from castor beans. The umbrella used in the attack was modified to shoot the pellet into his leg using compressed gas. The case shocked Britain. Newspapers called it the umbrella murder. It sounded almost absurd, but it was confirmed by the doctors. The Bulgarians had silenced one of their loudest critics in the middle of London on Zhivkov's birthday, and left the West with a reminder of just how far the Cold War could reach. If you're enjoying this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. We've got more coming for you. Georgi Markov's story begins when he was recovering from tuberculosis in his youth. That is when his talent as a writer began to emerge. He started scribbling stories and essays, testing ideas and voices. Gradually, that spark turned into a flame. In 1957 came his first novel called The Night of Cesium. A couple of years later, he published The Ajax Winners. And in 1961 came 2 collections of short stories that solidified his position among Bulgaria's rising literary stars. Then came Men in 1962, a novel that earned him a prestigious Winners Award and secured his membership in the Union of Bulgarian Writers. Markov also dabbled in television, co-writing the popular series Every Kilometer, a historical drama celebrating Bulgaria's anti-fascist past. It aired widely, aligning with official accounts but showcasing his storytelling flair. His livelihood, once modest, suddenly included respect, recognition, and a touch of prestige. But soon he began to notice the cracks in the socialist utopia. He noticed how rhetoric masked corruption, how conformity replaced authenticity, how voices were muted by fear. The more Markov wrote honestly, the more the system sensed betrayal. They started to halt his plays mid-print and removed before the audiences could even see them. In 1969, seeking safety, he left Bulgaria for Bologna, Italy, where his brother lived. What began as a short break turned into exile. By September 1971, Bulgarian authorities refused to renew his passport. he was cut off from his home. They branded him a defector. Membership in the Union of Writers was revoked. In 1972, he was convicted in absentia and sentenced to over 6 years in prison. Markov attracted listeners by combining everyday stories with bold political insight. He revealed how ordinary Bulgarians lived under the censorship and fear, how elections offered no real choice, how writers couldn't write what they needed to. One of his memorable lines painted it very plainly. "We have statesmen who have no state, writers who do not write, elections in which there is no choice." He also pulled back the curtain on Bulgaria's leadership. In his series Personal Meetings with Todor Zhivkov, he satirized the dictator in a way that stung. Markov wrote that the main evil in Bulgarian culture was interference by the party, and behind the party's interference stood its chief organizer and executive, Todor Zhivkov. By the mid-1970s, Bulgarian state security had already drawn up plans to silence him, and in 1978, they did it. British investigators launched an international inquiry, working with intelligence services to trace how such a weapon had ended up on their streets. Ricin was not new. Scientists had known about its deadly properties for decades, but extracting ricin is dangerous and requires skill. It was the pellet that was peculiar. It was designed to delay the release of ricin until his body heat melted the sealing material. That explained why he didn't collapse immediately after being struck. The poison spread slowly, mimicking an infection at first, which confused doctors. To confirm the theory, scientists conducted animal experiments. When pigs were injected with ricin in the same way, they showed identical symptoms to Markov. Now the attention turned to who ordered the hit. The evidence pointed directly to Bulgaria's secret police, with technical assistance from the Soviet KGB. Former intelligence officers who later defected described how Bulgarian officials had requested specialized assassination devices from Moscow. The KGB denied involvement, but some people claimed that only the Soviets had the expertise to engineer such a weapon. The umbrella gun itself became a symbol. A handful of prototypes were later found after the fall of communism. They confirmed that this was not a one-off invention. Assassins had tools ready for use against dissidents abroad. But while the weapon was proven, identifying the actual assassin proved more elusive. Over the years, some claimed it was a Bulgarian agent working under the diplomatic cover. Others pointed to Francesco Gullino, a Dane of Italian origin who had worked with Bulgarian intelligence under the code name Agent Piccadilly. He lived in London as an antiques dealer and matched intelligence records. The Markov case remained officially unsolved. Bulgarian prosecutors closed their side of the investigation in 2013, citing expired statutes of limitation. British authorities kept theirs technically open, but with the main suspects dead, justice practically never arrived. The assassination of Georgi Markov left his family devastated. His wife, Annabelle, and their daughter were left with grief and unanswered questions. He had been killed not for money, not for power, but for words, for daring to speak against a government that couldn't stand criticism. Dissidents everywhere saw what had happened in London and understood the risk of speaking out. If Bulgaria could reach Markov in broad daylight on the streets of a Western capital, nowhere was truly safe. In the West, though, the murder had the opposite effect of what Bulgaria wanted. Instead of silencing Markov's words, it amplified them. News outlets replayed his broadcasts, reprinted his writings, and reminded audiences of why he was targeted in the first place.